I'm loving your shirt choices today. You've changed every hour. I'm feeling like I've really not kept up with you, but thanks for doing that. It's brightened my morning up. But we're starting with you this hour. You've gone for the story in the Times on page 3. This is about this portrait of William and Harry. It was in the National Portrait Gallery. The gallery's been closed for refurbishment. It's now not going to be up there. What's behind this?
Yeah, £35 million refurbishment, which is great. Nobody seems to know why it's not being put back up. It's interesting that the Prince of Wales is a patron of the gallery, so I don't know if that's anything to do with it. But surely art is about expression and also controversy and also discussion. So I think it's sad that they're not putting this picture back up because, first of all, I think it's a beautiful portrait. They're two brothers. Two very important people, very explosive relationship between the two of them now, and that's what art's about. It's thought-provoking. So I'm sad they're not putting it up. But then again, there are so many portraits in the world that need to go in that magnificent refurbished gallery. So give somebody else a chance, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, Kevin. You know, you can't hang all the pictures up at the same time, can you? Obviously, they have a massive collection. They also have a lot more hair in this picture. Maybe it was just hurtful looking at it.
Well, perhaps. I think the one thing we can possibly all safely agree on is that the King was not involved in this picture being removed. He's got a lot on his plate.
It is a good picture, though, isn't it? And it's nice seeing it there in the Times anyway. But I'm sure we'll see it again. I'm sure it will resurface at some point in the future. Kevin, you were looking at the inside pages of the Express, and you've picked out this picture about British troops. Now, this is a survey that's been carried out, the Armed Forces Continuous Attitude Survey, into military equipment, and it seems that a lot of those don't believe their equipment is good enough.
Yeah, and you know, good journalism brings to us as listeners, viewers or readers information that we perhaps would not otherwise have seen and highlights some extraordinary facts. And this piece from the Express does that because it talks about 30% of personnel in the Navy currently don't feel their equipment's up to scratch. The Marines, my father-in-law was one, 20% of Marines are satisfied, with the equipment. And the thing that really staggered me as a reader of the paper this morning is that there are currently still in service Army fighting vehicles dating from the early 1960s. Now, I just find that as a proud citizen quite worrying and shocking, really. And we are a good country in that we spend our recommended share of GDP on defence, but I don't think many readers or listeners or viewers will be comfortable about vehicles from the 1960s still being in circulation. So a good piece here from the Express.
But isn't it the case, you know, Kevin, that there are lots of classic cars out there, and perhaps this is more a testament to the engineering and the fact that these vehicles are the kind of vehicles that you can repair endlessly, which makes them in tough areas and very simple.
This is magnificent. You have a second career in public relations with that, Jane. That is, you know, it's fine for a classic car rally. We're talking about life and death situations, and I would still go back to my earlier point, but I like what you did.
Kevin, I'll be in touch when I'm looking for that second career with you. Thanks very much for that. Pete, you've chosen a story inside the Mirror next. Now, these are stag and hen do's. Now, mercifully, I'm out of that age now. You know, you sort of go through a point in your life, don't you, where you seem to be going to loads of hen do's and loads of weddings, and you're spending a fortune. That time has now passed, thank goodness. And when looking at this article, flippin' heck am I pleased, because the amount that people are spending, over £1,000 per person expected to be spent on a stag or a hen do if you go abroad. Who's got that kind of cash?
Isn't it interesting you said stag and hens, because it was always called stag and hens, and now they say hen and stags, and it's crazy. It is getting out of hand. A lot of people are turning down stag and hen do's because they can't afford it anymore. They're talking £786 on average in England, £1,500 over in when you go abroad. A friend of mine, Vicky, had 3 hen do's, which was ridiculous. And they're getting
the same marriage, Pete.
Hey?
The same marriage or different? You have to ask these days.
Good on Vicky. I mean, Vicky loves a party, doesn't she? But it's a lot to expect of people.
It's crazy. Now, really, the expense, because weddings are scandalous anyway, and you're just going to get a sore head and a sore hangover, as in a bank hangover. It's crazy. I went on a hen do recently. My goddaughter invited me, lovely Hope, and it was special, and I was with 40 girls. I had a ball.
But a lot of cities don't want them in this country, don't they, Kevin? You know, it's not a lot of the places that people traditionally used to go for a big night out. I'm from Newcastle; that was always a big one. I know Liverpool's a big one as well. Dublin's another big one, isn't it?
Yeah, and major tourist destinations have reacted over time to the growing phenomenon of these trips. You know. And the story today is very interesting that Pete chose because of the cost, but a lot of destinations became very popular for budget hen and stag trips, and it was all focused around copious amounts of alcohol. And you know, in some places, the behaviour of Brits has been singled out by some of our fellow countries around Europe. So a very interesting trend.
It's a bit like Christmas, isn't it, Pete? You know, you've kind of forgotten what the point of it was. You know, it was a point to match a turning point in your life. You know, I'm sure a lot of people will still go on and party after they've got married. It's not like it's the last time you're ever going to do it. Right, let's move on to a more serious story. And this is inside the Mail. And Kevin, this is one that you've chosen. This is about prison staff who are now so concerned about attacks that they're actually calling for body armour. They're calling it an epidemic of violence in jails.
That's right, Jane. And again, a really interesting story because, you know, hidden away on page 34 of the Mail. And the angle is basically talking about a union for prison officers complaining that the prison service is reluctant to issue them body armour and police-style uniforms. And it talks about, on the one hand, serious assaults on officers are up compared to past years, up 2%. The piece finishes with a statistic from the prison side, saying that assaults in prisons are down 30% on 4 years ago. So you've got a war of statistics, but the common sense thing that jumps out of this story for me that I think Sky listeners and viewers will feel is that if prison officers feel they would like increased protection and more police-style uniforms, I think the public will be more sympathetic to that than the reason that was given for not introducing them, which is that the prison service didn't want officers to intimidate prisoners by their clothing. I think that line is really quite ludicrous, and I think a job that's undervalued and underpaid give the officers what they and their union are asking for.
But the prison service have said in this piece that actually assaults are 30% lower than they were in 2019. So they're saying that on the face of it, the picture in prisons is a lot better.
And that's it, Jane. And that's my point. Is in the one piece, you finish up with that stat about, oh, well, the prison service says they're down 30% since 2019, when actually the officers and their union are saying that the serious assaults on officers are up, and there's been an increased use of certain materials to attack officers. So you've got statistics that can argue the point both ways, that you often get in good newspaper articles, but ultimately, is the public really worried that prisoners might be intimidated by staff uniforms? I suspect not.
Pete, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I do indeed. It's a horrendous story, and he's so right. Kevin is so right. I spent 2 weeks in prison doing a documentary a few years ago on radio, and what I saw in there, I wouldn't do their job for the world.
Not so, Pete.
Yeah. Right, a couple of lighter ones to end on. Kevin, you've picked the Times story about wildfires. There's lots of warnings about more raging wildfires across Britain. This is the Met Office this warning this, isn't it?
Yes, Jane, and I thought it was interesting that we've got a big warning from the Met Office to look out for specifically the very high risk of wildfires in the South and the Midlands in the coming week. And of course, that for those of us living in Britain in the first 5 months of this year, where we're wondering where summer's gone. It's really interesting to have that warning. But I was also really surprised, and I was in Scotland the week before last for work, but I hadn't realised there's just been a wildfire in the Highlands, 30 square miles in size, that the Met Office says, may be the largest ever recorded in Britain, which I found staggering.
Yeah, and we haven't even heard it on the news, have we? It's astonishing. And Pete, I mean, it's it seems a long time since we had them last summer, but of course, very quietly, there basically hasn't been any rain for the last week, has there, Pete? So, we're sort of getting back into that dry area again, aren't we?
It's worrying. It's worrying. I live on the Wirral, and we've got Caldy Hill and Granger, and we've got the golf courses, and it is so dangerous because people don't realise a little tiny piece of glass that they might have left behind could start that fire. It really is frightening, and I've seen the two hills burnt out so many times. It's terrible.
It's terrible. Now, your final story today, Pete, is in the Express. Now, this is about allotments, waiting lists hitting 3 years. It's saying anger is growing as allotments waiting lists in 3 years. Most gardeners, I know, are pretty laid back. I would say irritation would be growing more than anger, Pete. But tell us a bit more about this story.
It's a really interesting story, and I'm glad I managed to be able to talk about this because it's an important story. 3-year waiting list. It costs about £45 to have an allotment. I think there's 330,000 allotment owners who are run by independent associations. But why this is important, and I think council should really look at the land and put more allotments up because it's healthy, it's getting people out of the house, it's giving them purpose, especially a lot of people who are older, gives them purpose to get up and go out, and then they have fresh fruit and fresh food. Also, more and more young people are doing it since the pandemic, and I think we should look at what's going on where we live and say, there's a piece of land, why couldn't that be put into an allotment? It will also help indirectly, the NHS. Because they're healthier, they're eating better, and they've got purpose, and they do some exercise.
Hear. Well, you won't hear any arguments from me on that front. I used to have an allotment, and it was a fantastic thing. Pete Price and Kevin Craig, thank you both so much for taking us through your choices today. It's been lovely to talk to you. Have a lovely Saturday. Enjoy the football, Kevin.
Thanks, Jane.